Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me once again in Unreal Engine 5. It's been a minute and I thought today I'd make a video in response to one of the comments I got in an older video. Today's video is all about sound and control bus mixing, and I'm going to dive in to show you real quick what we're doing. It's based off of a previous video where I showcased my underwater audio. I didn't go into any detail of how to do it. I was just kind of showing it off. So this video is all about teaching you how to do the same thing I did in that previous video. So let me take a moment to just show you what we're going to do. So I've got a level here, we have our water, and what we're going to do is when I hit play, we're going to notice the difference between the sound when we're underwater versus over water. So let's have a look. I've got my music and sound effects kind of full volume so you can hear. You notice how they've kind of muffled underwater. And if I turn off the music, so you probably noticed the music because it was the loudest. But just listen to the sound effects. Hear that wind transition to like a bubbly underwater sound. If I dash, that's what it sounds like above. If I dash underwater, it's a little more muffled. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you real quick how this works in my project, and then we'll do it step by step together. So if I go into, this is my ocean. If I edit the blueprint, I've already kind of zoomed in on the important bit here. This is set audio for above the water and set audio for, this should be below the water. This one should be below. So what we need is a trigger. So I'm using an onComponent begin overlap and it's going to look for an actor with a tag that I've assigned player. So if I go to my player pawn, we search for tags. You see I have assigned it the tag player. So going back to my ocean, once I have the component, which one is this? Underwater collision. So I have this one here set up, just a box underneath the, I think it's a thin box. No, it's a thick box. Sorry, my zoom's really fast. So I've got a box collision to detect an overlap. It's going to check to see if it is the player. So we're not using any hard references. This is kind of called a soft reference, so they're not dependent on each other. And then branch, check to see if that is true or not. And if it is true, we're going to activate our control bus mix. And then once it's activated, we can play around with it. And if I go here, this is the control bus mix that we're going to make together. I'm going to probably just go over this one here. These ones I didn't really end up using, but I've left them in for now. We're going to focus on this one. These are kind of, yeah, so I just didn't end up using these. But if you notice, I've called this CB, so Control Bus Low Pass Filter, LPF. And where do we get that? We had to make it. And it is this one here. For double click, you have a control bus. You can set the type, the parameter type, from pitch, panning, time of day, volume, all kinds of stuff. High pass, cutoff, low rate, frequency, bit depth. I'm using an LPF cutoff frequency so that I can cut off those high frequencies to make it sound like we're underwater. Because if you notice, when you're underwater, only those kind of lower bass notes propagate. You don't get any of the really crispy, tiny, or high-end underwater. So that is what's happening in a nutshell. We're activating the master control bus, and then we're setting that, using that parameter, we're going to, there's the ability to have a fade for the change, that this is the time, this is the value, I'm bringing it down. It was default at 1, so the control bus is, the low pass filter is going to let everything through at a value of 1. And then if I've set it at, it's from 0 to 1, even though we're looking at frequencies from 0 to 20,000. So 0.33 is a number I played around with that I thought sounded good. So you can play around with your own value there for low pass filters. And then this is a little extra bit where I am changing the sound of my ambience. From above the water, it sounds like wind and birds kind of, and then underneath the water, this is underneath the water, I've switched the ambient sound to those bubbly underwater sounds. I'll just show you real quick what that looks like. Ocean ambience. So let's find it, pull it up. So it's basically two wave players, and it's going to interpolate between the two over 0.25 seconds when this Boolean switches. So by default, it is playing this soft waves one, because I think by default, the Boolean is set to false. So let us try to build our own. I'm going to close out, or we'll make a new project. How about that? Actually, let me exit. Okay, we're going to start a new project, just a third person. I'm in 5.5. Starter content, sure, we'll call this Control Bus Demo. All right, so we were loaded into this third person template. Let's just press play and run around. There we go. So, what we can do is to simulate this underwater experience. We're going to add a plane to the world, and that'll act like our water surface. So we can just go up here real quick and get shapes, a plane. I'll call this just water surface. And I'm going to orient it so that we can run into it. And let's make it bigger. This way and that way. And we'll move it over here. A little bigger. There. So that's our water. When we press play, we'll just bump into it. Nothing happens. Bump. So first thing we'll do is turn off collisions. This is just a little bit of setup so we can get to the actual audio part of it. No collision. We're going to turn this into a blueprint by pressing this button here. Static mesh actor, sure. Okay. So we have to do this so that we can play with this a little bit. So on component, overlap. And end overlap. We can delete these ones, and now we'll just go with debug, right? Print a string, say overlap. Overlap start, and then end. And what we'll do is we'll say if the other actor has tag. Let's see. going to use player because that's what I do for my own game. Branch. Okay. What we'll also have to do is get our main player character, which is right here, and we're going to add a tag to him. Actor tag, player, compile. So now when we press play, we should be able to run through it and we should get that print string. And no print string. That's okay. Let's figure out why. That's why we have a debug. Let's try this. Let's see here. Collision. Okay, yeah, so we do want to generate overlap events. Maybe that was what was missing. Let's compile and save. Okay. Okay, so end is because it's a thin plane mesh. You know what I should have done instead of a thin plane mesh is used a box. Let's go to here. Box collision. There you go. We'll just make it bigger. Oops. Maybe thicker. Let's push it down. Okay, so you see, let's make it even deeper. Go 15. Like that. So now we have a box collision, but we're still using that mesh. So let's change in the event graph to use these from this instead of that. Okay, just like that. So now we have a box mesh, box collision mesh, see overlap start, and then when I walk all the way to the other end, overlap end, we'll go through it again, start, and then end. Okay, so now we have our trigger set up. What else should we do with it? We're going to activate a control bus mix, so we're going to need to set up a control bus mix. So what we're going to do actually first is get some audio in the game, kind of make a meta sound that looks something like this. Okay. So let's make a meta sound source. Audio meta sound source. We'll call it ambience. Put it up here. We'll get rid of this unfinished warning by removing this interface over here. That's for one-shot sound effects. This is going to be an ongoing playing piece of music. So we're going to need a wave table, or sorry, a wave player. I think mono is fine. I was using stereo. Let's just keep it the same. And we'll duplicate it. going to grab some audio and we'll pull it in here. So this will be our underwater audio. Use the selected sound wave. No. So there's our wave file for underwater. And here's our wave file for above the water. Go back to our Metasound source. Oops. So we'll say soft waves is above the water. Put it there. Ambience underwater is there. So let's see what that sounds like. Oops. Can also make this stereo by going to the Metasound here, coming down to output format, changing it to stereo. There you go. Now we have a left and a right. That's what we want it to sound like when we're outside of the water. And if I make a mixer, there it is, stereo mixer 2. And then output there. Can promote this to a graph input. If I turn this one all the way down, you hear those kind of waves. Oh, I didn't hook this up. Now you hear the bubbles of being underwater. So what we want to do is transition between these two at runtime. And we can just do it with the volume. It's pretty cool. So how do we do that? We'll use the trigger. I don't know if we need him anymore, so let's get rid of that. We're going to attach the music to this, our water blueprint. So let's attach an audio. Just click that one, it's fine. We'll call this ambience. Right, now we can go over to the right side and we want to see, instead of taking this wave file, we're going to take the Metasound source here. So you can click that, like that. One thing I noticed, we should probably hit this loop button. And we'll kind of leave like this for now. So if we hit play, we should be able to hear that ambience. So nothing's going to change yet. But that works, right? So now we want to come back here. We can grab this. And within here, we're going to want to set up a Boolean variable. Okay, so over here we can have variables. So let's do is underwater. Change the type to Boolean here. Save it. And then we'll come out here. Actually, we want this to be an input. So delete that. We'll go up to inputs instead. So those inputs can be accessed from other blueprints in the game. Variables not so much. So let's do that again. Change the type to bool. And there we go. So see, now that looks different. We can address it as an input, kind of like this one here. So I want to use an interp, a float. We're going to convert the Boolean. It'll be a 0 or a 1 now here in that float target there. And we're going to take the time. I think 0.25 is what I used on my other game here. And then we'll output this. We can get rid of these ones. We don't need those as inputs. But we can take the output here and then do the subtract. Do this. This is 1. So 1 minus 1 would be 0. 1 minus 0 is 1. So logically, if this bool is 0, we're going to have a 0 in here. So 0 will feed into this gain, and then 1 minus 0 will go into here. So if is underwater is false, it's going to play full volume of this one. So let's switch those up. There. That should work. So what we can do over here is we can now set that input. I forget how to do this. There we go. Set Boolean parameter. Target is audio component. So let's change to the audio component version. There, this one. So let's think. This is begin overlap, so this means we're going underwater. So we're going to say is underwater is set to true here. Right, and we need the name, of course. Let's make sure we get the name of this input right. Is underwater. We can copy it even if we want. Come back here, paste it, and duplicate this. And uncheck that, because now we're out of the water. So let's see if this part worked. Yeah. Pretty cool. So that part of it seems to work okay, and it's not that complicated. We know we went step by step. We're playing both of these waves at the same time, but one of the volume is off while the other is on, and we're kind of interpolating between the two at a interval of 0.25 seconds. Now, how do we do that trickier part where we mess with the low pass filter? We want it to wipe off the top end, so all we hear is the muffled low end. For that, we'll need to make some control buses. Okay, so in order to use a control bus mix, we have to activate a certain plugin. So if we go to our figure out how to do this. Plugins, there we go. We're looking for audio modulation. Default implementation of audio modulation in Unreal Audio Engine. So we click that. It's going to want to restart, so restart now. Okay, with that plugin now installed, we have access to some new nodes. close you. So over here, let's see if we can find control bus mixes. Da, 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 da. Let me go up here. Control bus and control bus mix. So let's start with the control bus. We'll call it CB LPF. This is for a low pass filter. So let's double click it, dock it. And see, we have a parameter choice here. You can scroll through, or you can type LPF, save it. Okay, and now we can make a control bus mix. We'll call this CBM master. Because you can do more than just this low pass filter, but we're just going to add the low pass filter for now. So you see I have all these things up here. Mixing stages, we're going to hit a plus button there. And that's going to allow us to add a bus. We're going to use the one we just created. And because it knows it's a parameter type of a filter, it's got these values of 20,000 down to 1. Sorry, 20,000 is 1. So 0 is 0. Just so you know what you're working with there. Okay, so now we can come back to our ambience, and then we're going to need to play with the modulation over here on the left here. We're going to go down and hit union. And modulate. And we can set the element here to control there we go, that one. We can save that. So let's go back to our water, and we're going to have to say activate shoot, what was it? Activate control bus mix. Which one are we going to use? This one here, CBM master. So once that's activated, then we can play with parameters within it. So we're going to set global control bus mix value. There we go. So what control bus are we going to use? This LPF. The value, like I said, 0 would bring it all the way down. You wouldn't hear anything. So let's use a third. And the fade time, 0.25, just to match our other fade time of our switching between our ambient sounds. And this is underwater, so we've got a value that's down low. It's going to, anything above 0.33 is going to filter out. And I think we need a deactivate control bus mix. There. That goes there. And we can duplicate this and put this back to 1. So I don't know if we can tell with the ambience, with just the ambience, but let's give it a shot. It's hard to tell because the entire sound is changing. So let's add a third sound to the game that's going to run consistently no matter what side we're on, and we'll see how it works. Okay, I'm just going to pull in another wave file. It's a song, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna just put it in the game. Drag and drop it. There we go. Sorry, there we go. Let's press play. Forward. You know why though? We haven't assigned the modulation to it. Let's go down here, union, modulate, add the element, LPF. Boom. I also want to make it a little quieter. Where's the volume? Here. Cool, it's working. And just in case you have a hard time hearing it, let's turn, let's turn this song back up to full volume so you can hear how it's being modulated. You can hear all the top end kind of being scrubbed. That is essentially all there is to it. You don't even need this part, but it is kind of fun to have different sounds, different ambience above and below water. And just remember that anytime you add more audio to your game, you're going to want to add this LPF cutoff in the modulation section. And this modulation section is going to be accessed when you turn on that plugin for audio modulation. Remember to click this button here. See, if you don't click modulate, it'll just use this here, this 20,000, which is letting everything through. So if you hit the modulate, then you can use this control bus, and we're going to affect the control bus by setting the global control bus mix value with this node here. And make sure to deactivate it afterwards as well, because it's going to hog up performance. Okay, I hope that was crystal clear, but if you have any questions or follow-up questions, or you can leave them in the comments below. Remember, you can always make more of these ones. There's panning, pitch, volume. So if you want to just turn the volume down when you're on the other side, you can add a second one here. Whatever it was, you called it CB volume maybe, and it'll recognize the correct parameter based on whatever it is you load in here, if it's volume or panning or frequency related. And then you just use a node like this once it's activated to change the volume. We could do that real quick if you like. Let's add just a second one. So I'm going to go control bus, call it CB volume, open it up. It defaults to the volume parameter, so that's fine. Go open this up again. Now we're going to select CB volume, save that. And now when we go into this, we can also duplicate. We'll pick volume instead. And why don't we bring the volume all the way down to like 0.1. Ooh, this needs to go in the end, doesn't it? I wonder how that worked. Why did that work like that? Man. Put it at the end. I guess when we hit deactivate, it just resets all the defaults. But this is probably the best way to do it. Activate, change, and then deactivate. Okay. So that didn't work, and anybody paying attention, tell me why. Because this guy here needs another modulation for volume. So we can go union, modulate, and we find the volume one. And we should do that for the ambience as well. Over here we had low pass filter modulation. Now we'll do the volume, set it to union, modulate, grab the low pass, sorry, not the low pass, the volume one. So now they should both work. Pretty cool. It's like you went into a anechoic chamber. Is that what it's called? So, I hope you learned something today. Modulating audio in different ways and what you can do and how you can be creative with those tools. Once again, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear all your feedback, and if you have any requests for special videos, I'm always interested in doing them if I have enough time. Today, I had enough time, so I was glad to do it. All right, take care, everybody. See you next time.